Welcome to the MacGuffin Podcast. I'm Spencer, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Kevin Tomlinson, director, producer, probably every nameable role.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades on the documentary Back to the Garden, which was a wonderful documentary that played, amongst other places, on Real Northwest, the KCTS series that is about local Northwest filmmakers. Why don't we start at the beginning, though? What is Back to the Garden? What is the essence of the movie?
I guess the essence of the movie would be it's a time-lapse view of a community of back-to-the-land hippies that we watch over a 20-year period. I call it a kind of a hippie 7-Up. For those who are familiar with the 7-Up series.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. I mean, that was one of the first things that occurred to me is that I was like, wow, this is great, because 7-Up, for those who don't know, was directed by Michael Apted. As a series in the United Kingdom, I believe, where they followed the lives of this group of their children when they first picked them up. But every 7 years, they made a new version of it. And I heard 7-Up, or was it 7-Up 56 or whatever?
I think they're up to 56
which will be premiering in 2012 or something when I look today. But basically, it's sort of like you see how these people evolve over time.
Yeah.
Did you initially go into this? Because you first filmed these people in Eastern Washington in 1988.
Right.
Did you initially go like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen to these people in 20 years? Or were you like 20 years after the fact and you're like, I wonder what happened to those guys?
More the latter.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wish I could say I was so prescient to think, okay, I'm going to record this now, and then 20 years later we're going to see where they are. No, it was really on instinct. I did not have a clue what I was going to do with the footage. I just felt like, wow, in 1988, and this sort of hippie flower power movement is still alive and well out in the rural backcountry of Washington State. I want to document that. So everything kind of fell into place after the fact, because now 1988 might be before your time, I'm guessing.
Oh no, I mean I was alive, but I don't remember a heck of a lot about 1988.
Let me just refresh a little historical background, just for the sake of giving
absolutely
why it took so long to do this. In 1988, Ronald Reagan was our president, a very conservative government. So the most popular film in the theaters at that time was Wall Street, Oliver Stone's Wall Street, in which the main character says greed is good. And so I just felt like this is going to be totally out of sync with the time. Fast forward 20 years, and a lot of guilty feelings on my part for not having done anything with this footage that was literally decomposing in my basement.
Wow.
I suddenly thought, wow, you know, what did happen to all these people? Let's find out and see if we can connect the two episodes, and that's what happened.
How did you become aware of this group in the 1980s that were still sort of living this hippie lifestyle? Because, I mean, this was before, like, the internet. You couldn't just, like, look this stuff up online and be like, hippies, Northwest, anything like that. I mean, did you just happen to just stumble upon these people?
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, I was on a road trip with a friend. We were driving out, we were literally car camping for about 2 weeks in Eastern Washington, trying to get out of the city. And we were young guys at the time, and we just wanted to have our own little Jack Kerouac, Neil Cassidy experience. And we went to rodeos and just kind of went to state parks, camped out, and lo and behold, we go to a small town called Tonasket. I go into this little food co-op, and I see this handwritten poster on the wall announcing a healing gathering, and I thought, that sounds kind of like a love-in or a be-in or what, you know, let's check that out. So at the time, I was just starting out being a camera person for hire. So I took my camera with me, which, by the way, not like your camera here, which was sort of a compact, beautiful little high-quality HD camera. No, this was a big-ass, you know, on your shoulder, connected to a big deck hanging over my... I mean, I was not exactly blending in. So anyway, I shot footage, but I had to ask permission, and there was some... You know, there had to be a consensus about this because a lot of people were suspicious of my motives. And they literally wanted to kind of keep this, you know, keep the mainstream out. So anyway, I shot the footage, and like I said, I looked at it, and at the time it just seemed kind of cliched. And okay, we're talking about peace, love, and harmony. Who's going to really want to listen to this when we're really talking about, I'm going to get mine, and too bad if you don't get yours. Right. So.
I mean, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, as time went along, did you just think about it every so often, like, oh, I got that footage down in my basement, I should really do something with
I'm
that?
afraid so, yeah. It was constantly bothering me, and I mean, really, like so many things in life, it took someone else to bring it out of me. Eventually, almost 20 years later, I was talking to a producer in Amsterdam who does children's documentaries, and I mentioned the fact that I had this footage when we were talking about, you know, what kind of a project could we do together? And she said, wow, you've got footage of hippies and, you know, the beautiful wide open space, interviews, send me some of that stuff. So in going through the footage that I had, that literally was, you know, lying in boxes for almost 20 years, in going through the footage, it was just amazing how, in the context of now this budding green revolution, this almost seemed like prophecy.
Yeah, I mean,
it was amazing.
I mean, it worked out perfectly with the rise of, you know, after everything that came after Inconvenient Truth. I mean, it just blew up, and that became like almost an industry in and of itself.
It has. It has.
It's really interesting. That's one of the things I sort of think about when I look at like the Up series, is how difficult is it to sort of connect this group of people from 20 years ago till now? I mean, back then, you know, you had phone books, and it was before the internet, and did you consciously think like, oh, I need to get your address, I need to get your address, or did you like have to like piece through it through your footage 20 years later? Because it's you didn't initially go into this thinking, oh, I'm gonna make this thing 20 years later where I combine it. It just sort of seems like you were spur of the moment, like, oh, I should get some footage of this, not really with a specific plan in place. But then when you got a plan, it seems like there's got to be a lot of retroactive research to figure out who these people are, where they've gone, all this sort of stuff.
No, very true. I did have some addresses, but of course I had no idea whether 20 years later they were still going to even be there. So this comes up a lot. Yeah, how did I reconnect with these people? And strangely enough, I went back to the same source that where I originally found them, which was through this health food store. I found out the email address. I sent an inquiring email expressing who I was and that I had some footage from 20 years ago, and how could I connect with these people whose names I had written down, had recorded on the tape, and so really it came down to just them saying, well, we'll let those folks know, and if they want to get in touch with you, you know, they will. And luckily, you know, it all fell into place. But
I mean, what was sort of the initial response when you got in touch with these people? Were they sort of receptive to the follow-up? Or were they sort of like, again, leery about like what your motives were? Because I mean, you came to them 20 years earlier, you filmed them, as far as they know, like, they had no idea what happened to that footage. Like, maybe you were a spy for Reagan or something. I mean, who knows?
The CIA was the usual thought.
I mean, who knows what they could have thought? But, like, and then you come back 20 years later, sort of like, hey, I'd like to get some more footage of you to go along with this footage I never used before. Like, were they initially leery again, or were they like, wow, that's a kind of cool idea? I think, you know.
You know, I think most of the people were really quite happy to take part in this process and this project, and many of them had forgotten that they'd even done this interview with me.
No, I would imagine. Yeah.
You know, I mean, some did remember, but others had completely forgotten about it. And the way I did this, Spencer, is I took sort of a rough cut of all this old footage. I took it on my laptop out to this annual event, which is called the Okanagan Barter Fair, which attracts about 10,000 people every October. And I knew I was going to find each one of them there, and I hunted them down and pulled them over to my my car or someplace where we could sit down together. I played the DVD for them, and they were, they were singing the songs. They were smiling. Their kids were there. They were really engaged in the process. So I felt really good that they completely bought into the idea of, sure, let's do the second part to this, which really amounted to my hanging out with them for the next 2 years.
Wow. What was the experience like in terms of, like getting all the archival footage and the new footage and everything together? Because, I mean, obviously technology probably was worlds different between those two times. I mean, was it difficult? You had this footage decaying in your basement versus a completely probably digital process when you went back. I mean, what was it like trying to get all this together and make like the old footage work with the new footage and the audio from the old one sync with
it? Wasn't too bad. I was really lucky in the sense that I'd shot it on a pretty good format. I shot it on Betacam back in the early, in late 80s actually. And that footage, although it was almost 20 years old, held up so well that some of the people, when they saw my rough cut, said, maybe you should like put in some scratchy effects because it looks really good.
Nobody's going to actually believe that it's old footage.
Exactly.
Wow,
so the only giveaway is that it's in the square 4:3 format rather than 16:9. So I use that as a kind of a means to show that this is the old stuff and here's the new stuff. And of course, we would date everything with font, but it wasn't that difficult to really piece it all together. I had a lot of help, getting all the transcriptions typed up. I was a teacher at the Seattle Film Institute at the time, and so I got a lot of students who were anxious to help out. I got a lot of free labor who came in and did a yeoman's job, and just sitting down with the footage and transcribing it, that made a huge amount of difference. So
that's very cool. How did you go about creating a narrative story? I mean, did you just completely take it from what you had asked the same people before? Or how did you go about, creating a story to this footage? I mean, obviously you had the footage from back in the day, and I don't know, I mean, who knows? I mean, you probably could answer what you were thinking when you were asking these people these questions. How did you then take that and sort of work around that to create a narrative from then till now and sort of the story in between?
Right. First of all, that's a good question. I wanted to have characters who each represented kind of a different aspect of the counterculture. I didn't want to have a lot of repetition because otherwise, people are just going to start falling asleep. So we had 6 main characters. Each of them are quite different in their own way. Then I wanted to show, their lifestyle and what is it about their lifestyle that's unique. I think we started just, my wife and I are the co-producers of this project. We started working together with a young editor because I started to edit it, and in a rough cut form it was fine, but it was just, I'm a cameraman by training, and I am not an editor, I found out, and I just felt like I wanted someone who had fresh eyes, and we could have, a situation where it's collaborative. I mean, filmmaking is a collaborative process, so we needed to have someone with a fresh perspective that I could then give the big picture to, let them work. We give some ideas, get some feedback, and basically we started just doing it on 3.5 by 5 index cards. Just what is it that we want to get across? Hippie values, marijuana, the peace movement, children and children's bringing up children. We just made a huge list and then started whittling away the things that just didn't seem that important, and it just evolved naturally out of all of that. So.
Were there any things that had occurred during that 20 years that had really surprised you and how much they had changed? I mean, 20 years, and you look at like the world events that occurred during that time, I mean, probably like Berlin Wall coming down, 9/11, all these sort of things. Like, the world continues to move on. Did it really I don't know, did your expectations from what you had done the first time correlate well to what you got the second time, or were you just shocked by how the world had changed even there?
Just the opposite. I think I was most surprised by how little things had changed for this community of Back to the Landers. And I think that's what really got me excited about the project, because most of them had stuck to their guns, walked their talk, and were still doing the community work, the community organizing, the grassroots politics of fighting the folks who would try to come in and unscrupulous land developers in their community. They were out there on the front lines organizing and fighting these folks off, teaching, living communally, teaching permaculture, in this case of Michael Polarski, who's also known as Skeeter. Growing their own food, raising their kids, really the things that they had talked about 20 years ago were still very strong and valid in their lives. And I saw a tremendous amount of stick-to-itiveness isn't really the word I want, but a tremendous amount of self-reliance and empowerment from having done these things. And they're mellow people, they're very private people. So that was all the more reason why I felt privileged to be able to have the opportunity to get, be a part of their lives and to show who these people really are, which actually was part of, I had a hard time even. You ask about what were my expectations. I kept wondering, so why am I making this film? I have this great footage. That was a big motivator. I want to connect the old footage with the new footage. We're all fascinated how people change over time. But what is there beyond that I want to say? And through the process of making this film, it really came out a lot of different things. But the main thing I wanted to get across was I wanted to expand on this really old, worn-out stereotype of what hippies are. That, we have this sort of Cheech and Chong image, for better or for worse. It's funny, but it's not, that is not the reality of the people that I had met or that I knew. Even outside of this group of Back to the Landers, these were smart, articulate, hard-working, determined people. I mean, they had to be in order to withstand 20 years of living below the poverty level in most cases. They had, a lot of opposition initially when they came in and moved into the small towns of eastern Washington because of their looks and their long hair. And they were able to really, over time, become real integrated and assimilated and valued members of their community as teachers, as community organizers, and as role models. So I think that they have good reason to be very proud of that. And but many of them are just way too humble to wave their flag. So I felt like that'll be my job.
You spent 2 years with these people. How exactly did that change the way you approached the film? I mean, did you initially have one sort of concept of how this was going to play out based upon your initial interviews, and then you spent 2 years with them and a different mindset came out, or I don't know, did things like Inconvenient Truth and all of the rise of the green industry change how you approached it? I mean, how did that experience change how you ultimately went about making the story for the film?
Well, okay, first of all, when I originally shot the footage, I was just going on instinct and just asking a lot of questions related to, why are you out here? And why have you chosen this lifestyle? And luckily, I was able to use that to fast forward to today and say, so, here's what you said 20 years ago. Are you still talking about not wanting a new television or a brand new car, and are you totally happy living out here in the hills versus living in the city? And I think really I had to kind of just assume that the main thing I was really going for was getting to know these people well enough so that I could ask very personal, honest questions, so that they, would really talk to me in a very personal way. And it's one of my philosophies about documentaries is really access is 90% of success.
Oh, totally.
You've got to spend some time with people. If you're just going to go in there briefly and do an interview and then pull out of there, you're really not going to get the kind of intimate, honest responses that you would otherwise. So I felt like I wanted to get to know them, and frankly, we became friends on almost every to a person. So I feel really good about the connections we made with each of the characters in our film, and I tried to be as honest about portraying them as possible, which in some ways was really walking a fine line.
Yeah.
I took a little bit of criticism also about, we have a little section in the film about marijuana use, and some of the people felt that maybe this was not a good thing to put in because many of them had worked so hard to become legitimate in the eyes of their non-hippie mainstream neighbors.
So they were afraid that, that whole Cheech and Chong persona might be, reignited.
Yeah,
Sorry.
for lack of a better word. The idea of including a section on marijuana in our film was a little controversial with some of our subjects who felt it could undermine their credibility that they'd worked so hard in their community to overcome. These are upstanding people. They are they don't want to be relegated to that stereotype that we're all so familiar with.
Right.
But I also felt that the way it's portrayed in our film is very even-handed. We are not advocating marijuana use in our film. It's really left up to the audience to kind of determine how they stand on it. But let me just finish the point. The point was that I felt like it would be disingenuous to make a film about the counterculture and not talk about marijuana. It just, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, then you're getting into a point at which, when you're doing a film, you want to be honest. You want to be forthright with your audience.
Right.
And if you're cutting out certain things just because it doesn't necessarily jive or whatever,
or it's controversial,
right, you can't. Then you're drifting in the realm of fiction. I mean, it's not going to be an honest portrayal.
Well, it's fairy tale then.
If you're cut, yeah, exactly. And I think it's unfortunate that there are these associations in our culture with hippies and marijuana and whatever.
Right.
But it is a topic that exists. I mean, maybe you should just address it forthright and be like, yeah, marijuana is part of our world, but it's not just like we sit around smoking weed, laughing, eating munchies or whatever.
Marijuana was, used as a way to be creative and to expand one's mind initially. After the 60s and then into the 70s and 80s, it became a party drug. It became, overused. But I think initially, from what my readings about it and my own experience, because I'm a child of the 60s as well, is it was made to enhance reality and to expand one's creativity and to open up one's mind to other alternative realities. Much like, maybe ecstasy is today. Ecstasy is maybe the new LSD today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even still, it's a whole other topic we can get into. But those drugs are far more dangerous than marijuana in terms of lethal toxicity.
Way more.
And I mean, I think the general populace is gradually moving towards a more pro-marijuana sort of stance. Even you look at the politics of Seattle, that now we've deemed that the lowest priority for our police is to enforce the marijuana.
Yeah, it's a misdemeanor, which I think is a great move.
So you're done with the film. It's out there. Where does it stand? Is it still in festivals? I mean, it's been on Real Northwest. It's on DVD. You've told me. Are you just trying to promote it at this point and take it wherever you can? Are you doing special screenings of it? What exactly is happening with the film these days?
Okay, all of the above. I mean, the DVD is available on our website, www.backtothegardenfilm.com. That's the only place you can buy the film. And we are getting some distribution, looks like, from a company out of San Francisco. We just found out actually last weekend at the San Francisco Green Festival.
Fantastic.
So that's great. That's gonna. We really want to target the college and high school library market, the educational market. There's so much interest I'm finding in young people today about the 60s and what was really going on back then. Our film has really drawn not only from, the aging baby boomers who want to be nostalgic perhaps, but also from young college students who kind of feel like maybe they missed out on something in this, in the 60s. And they want to maybe rekindle a little bit of that rebelliousness today and the new movements that are happening around defending the earth, being a greener planet, a greener populace, all those issues that so many of us feel so passionate about. I think we all can take a little bit of inspiration from what happened in the 60s. Sure, there's overindulgences as well as the good things, but for the most part, I think the counterculture and the 60s values has become so assimilated. I think most of us don't even realize that, the idea of yoga in the 60s was unheard of, and today it's almost in every small town you've got a yoga studio. For companies like Walmart and Safeway to carry organic food is a huge change. That wouldn't have happened without the hippies in the 60s.
You're absolutely right.
Natural childbirth, natural foods, recycling. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's a funny thing, but I think most people who felt like resistant to what the hippies were saying don't realize that it's really become a lot more assimilated and mainstream than they maybe are aware of. So anyway, getting it out there, we are continuing to show it at film festivals. We started at the Seattle Film Festival in 2009. It's been out there almost 2 years now, coming up to 2 years. It's shown at over 30 international festivals. We've been to Berlin, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Tel Aviv, Byron Bay, Australia, and several. I mean, it's had an incredible run, and I'm very, very. I feel so fortunate because I had no idea it was going to hit like it has hit, and right now it's also going to be available on local PBS. And we're actually in discussion with American Public Television about a national broadcast for the hour-long version, which is cut down from our 70-minute version. So, hey, I think we're lucky with the timing. Really lucky with the timing. Isn't
it screening on Real Northwest again on Earth Day?
It is. The day before Earth Day, actually. The 21st.
That works out pretty perfectly then.
I'm very happy about that.
Thank you so much for joining me, Kevin, and everyone go check it out. You can get it on DVD or maybe demand it come to a town near you.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
Yep.
T-1000 can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. It's tight, don't even try to buy the side style. Mr. Spock can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me, I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels alright.